Many of us are suspicious that the United States is in fact selling weapons to ISIS, which fuels the war on terror, specifically as it relates to destroying Syria. Now, a new investigation by Amnesty International, who I will give them credit for, is actually criticizing an imperialist power on real grounds, says that according to documents that they obtained through the Freedom of Information Act, the military failed to keep track of $1 billion worth of weapons that went and military equipment that went to Iraq and Kuwait, according to a new declassified Department of Defense audit obtained by Amnesty International through the Freedom of Information Act. Now, the government audit, which ran from September 16, reveals that the Department of Defense did not have accurate, up-to-date records on the quantity and location of vast amounts of equipment and weapons pouring into Kuwait and Iraq for the Provisional Iraqi Army. This audit provides a worrying insight into the U.S. Army's flawed and potentially dangerous system for controlling millions of dollars worth of arms transfers to a hugely volatile region. It makes for especially sobering reading given the long history of leakage of U.S. arms to multiple armed groups committing atrocities in Iraq, including an armed group calling itself the Islamic State. So we can definitely see that there is a pattern of the U.S. just mysteriously losing weapons to groups. They just managed to just lose track of them for some reason, which is strange. If they were just going straight to the Iraqi army, then they would certainly be accounted for. So I think this certainly does give some kind of evidence that the United States is giving weapons to ISIS and has also been receiving aid from Israel, etc. Now, the military transfers came under the Iraq Train and Equip Fund, which is a linchpin of a U.S. security cooperation. In 2015, the U.S. Congress appropriated $1.6 billion for the program to combat the advance of the Islamic State. Now, this transfer includes tens of thousands of assault rifles, which totaled to about $28 million, hundreds of mortar rounds, and hundreds of Humvee vehicles, which were destined for use by the Central Iraqi Army, including the predominantly Shia Popular Mobilization Unit and the Kurdish forces. Now, the Department of Defense audit found several shortcomings in how the ITEF equipment was logged and monitored from the point of delivery onward. Fragmentary record-keeping in arms depots in Kuwait and Iraq, information logged across multiple spreadsheets, databases, and even on handwritten receipts. Large quantities of equipment manually entered into multiple spreadsheets, increasing the risk of human error. Incomplete records, meaning those responsible for the equipment were unable to ascertain its location or status. Now, when confronted with this information, the Department of Defense said that it did not have a responsibility for tracking the ITEF transfers immediately after delivery to the Iraqi authorities. In other words, it's not our fault. It's the fault of the Iraqis. So if you want to attack somebody for weapons ending up in the hands of ISIS, you're going to want to blame them. Now, despite the fact that the department's Golden Century program is mandated to carry out post-delivery checks, in other words, the mechanism that the U.S. military is supposed to use to keep track of the weapons that it gives people literally isn't doing their job. And I don't think that that's some kind of administrative error. I highly suspect that this is being done on purpose in order to funnel weapons to groups in the region, like, say, ISIS or the al-Nusra Front, which is a part of al-Qaeda, which is attacking the Syrian government. It seems to me that this is very much something that's being done deliberately. I know people like to make a lot of jokes about the United States government being corrupt and incompetent, but they're not really that incompetent. I mean, this is the kind of thing that they do on purpose in order to get weapons to places which would not be politically palatable for the government to say publicly. I remember back in the 90s, there was a big criticism over the Pentagon supposedly spending $30,000 on a hammer. But many of us suspected that they didn't really spend $30,000 on a hammer, but they bought a hammer, and the rest of that money went to some kind of black ops that the public is not supposed to know about. So while this does not conclusively prove that the U.S. is giving weapons to ISIS, and this is not a claim that Amnesty International is making, it certainly does look very suspicious. And if you really do look into it, I certainly do think that this is some solid evidence of that which is going on. Because I don't think this is simply some kind of administrative error. We accidentally lost this money, or we accidentally lost these weapons. Of course not. I think they know exactly where those weapons go, and they went deliberately off the record books to do something that they would rather the public not know about. Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.